What is up, everybody? It is that time again for June updates, this time to my draft class in NBA 2K26. Thank you all for the support up to this point. If you're new here, please consider giving me a like down low or a subscribe. I'm trying to get to 2,000 subscribers, so any help towards that goal would be appreciated. A reminder for everyone that you must be on Xbox Series or PlayStation 5 to access this draft class. Sorry, I don't have anything accessible on PC. I'm expecting this is going to be a long video today, so there will be chapter markers in the description and on the video timeline, so check those out if there are areas that most interest you. We have a ton to cover today, so first place I'm going to actually start is with people who have withdrawn from the draft, who were in my draft class previously. So I'm going to put a list of names on the screen of all the players who I actually had to remove from my draft class because they ended up going back to school, / withdrawing, / entering the transfer portal. So it ended up being 20 players that I created that I ended up having to remove from my draft class. I think the most surprising of that list is Thomas Houck and Braylon Mullins. Those guys were expected to be anywhere in the top 20 range of this draft. So a little bit shocking that they pulled out, but hopefully will be good for their long-term development and to compete next year for another national championship. So with the possibility of other player withdrawals in mind, a lot of the players I've been focusing on adding have been players who don't have any further amateur eligibility left. So I actually added a ton of new players between last month's update and this month's update. I had to really grind it out because of those withdrawals, but that ended up in me adding 12 new players into this draft class. Those 12 players are Otega Oweh from Kentucky, Duke Miles from Vanderbilt, Tyler Nickel from Vanderbilt, Bruce Thornton from Ohio State, Rafael Castro from George Washington, Tamin Lipsey from Iowa State, Seth Trimble from UNC, Ugonna Onyenso from Virginia, Tre White from Kansas, Baba Miller from Florida State, Jaden Bradley from Arizona, and Keyshawn Hall from Auburn. So some things that stand out from each of these guys. So Otega Oweh actually participated in last year's combine, was on the fringe of committing to the 2025 draft, pulled out, returned to Kentucky, really known as a slasher type player. He shoots a lot of mid-rangers, but he's not that efficient, at least last year. A pretty good on-ball defender, but kind of struggles as an off-ball defender and three-point shooter. Duke Miles and Tamin Lipsey, I think I could cover them both simultaneously. They're a similar archetype, 6'1"-ish guards who kind of fit that Jose Alvarado mold if they're going to make it in the NBA. Defense first, these guys are high steal percentage players. Duke Miles has the highest steal rating in the draft class now, while they can carry playmaking responsibilities as well on the offensive end and have shown some scoring flashes as well. Bruce Thornton has been one of the best scorers in college basketball the last few years. He's a 6'1" guard, really burly size for that position. Can score at all three levels very efficiently, particularly from the close range of the court. He's one of the best in the draft class from that area of the floor. And is a prolific three-point shooter as well. Rafael Castro, Ben Pfeiffer actually did a really good breakdown on Rafael Castro. Basically, the summary of his game is he is a really good mover for his size. He was actually called up from the G League Elite Camp up to the NBA Draft Combine, where he measured well at both events. So moves really well, both north to south and east-west for a big, and he rebounds offensively really well. Doesn't really have much of a stretch game to his offensive profile and also struggles to catch the ball. So pretty interesting if he's deployed in the right way, particular on the defensive end. Seth Trimble from UNC is someone I've kind of been trying to get into this draft class. The case for him is kind of fitting that Jordan Goodwin archetype, just a 6'2", 6'3" guard who can play on-ball defense at a very high level. I think the UNC versus Kansas game is one that stuck out to me in the way he guarded Darren Pearson really well. He does struggle to shoot the ball from three, very much like his brother did at UNC. So kind of questionable where he would fit in the modern NBA as far as his offensive role. Onyenso, the case for him is just being a supreme shot blocker. He has a 90 block in the draft class. He stuck out to me during the ACC tournament run that Virginia went on this year, where I believe he had a game where he had like 9 blocks, and he had a handful of others where he had at least 6. So excellent shot blocker to the point where I was even considering giving him that gold rim protector badge, but I put it at silver. He can also stretch out to 3 as well. He's shown the capacity to hit 3s. Still, his offensive feel is a bit of a question. His defensive versatility is also a question, but does bring these very important skills to the table that teams are looking for at the next level. Tre White is more of an all-around kind of wing. I would describe it as he doesn't have a particular skill that stands out aside from his shooting, which is pretty good, but not great. He kind of fell off towards the end of the year. He went cold for Kansas. Good connective piece on the offensive end, was the second option at times for Kansas. Very strong, which helps him on the defensive end and with some of his finishing because he isn't the most vertical athlete. Baba Miller is a 6'11" athlete with some ball skills and passing chops as well. Struggles to shoot the 3 ball, but is a proficient finisher at the rim when it comes to dunking, both from a standstill and kind of off the dribble as well. Pretty versatile as a defender as well, and has been on the radar as a potential prospect for quite some time. I think based on his combine performance, in particular during the scrimmages, he's starting to make some noise as a potential late first round pick. Jaden Bradley actually won Big 12 Player of the Year this year over AJ Dybantsa. Quick guard who can score, particularly on his mid-range pull-ups, kind of struggles from 3 and at the rim, and also competes defensively. The best way to describe Keyshawn Hall to me is as a volume scoring hybrid forward. So he can take advantage of being in that forward slot with his ball skills to get to the rim, can struggle to finish against contact, so his at rim percentage was not the best. Is a pretty decent 3-point shooter, but is not the best of the best when it comes to shooting. Also struggled on the defensive end. Again, he's this tweener 3-4, but did struggle on the perimeter in particular. And then you have Tyler Nickel, who for Vanderbilt was one of the best shooters in the country. Doesn't have a ton else to his game, but does have good range and accuracy with that 3-point shot, which I'll cover a little bit later in the video. So tons of new guys in the draft class. If you've been following me on Twitter, you know I added most of these guys incrementally, so be sure to be following me there to get the latest and greatest on what's going on with the draft class. So pretty much all of these guys participated in the PIT or G League Elite Combine or the NBA Draft Combine, and I would expect that most of them will be second rounders and a few might end up going undrafted, but that is totally okay. These second round picks are more eye of the beholder, and you really need to stand out with outlier skills to end up on a roster. For this month's draft class update, I also had to adjust most of the players in the draft class because we had the combine take place last week. So of course, I'm going to acknowledge all the measurements that took place as far as height and wingspan, but the athletic testing measurements also matter in 2K. So I'm going to walk through some of the highlights of the player changes that I made based on what we saw happen during the combine last week. And the first place I'm going to start is with player height. And player height in the NBA is very weird because players get measured at the combine without shoes, but oftentimes players are listed in their height with shoes. There are a lot of exceptions that take place in either rounding up or down. Just look at Zachary Reese-Shea versus Cooper Flagg's height here. So I just used my best judgment here after adding 1 to the height measurement without shoes. So I ended up changing the heights of 11 players. You can see on the screen whose heights decreased and whose heights increased. Most notably, Amari Allen was listed by Alabama as 6'8", but the NBA Combine, after you add his height plus 1 without shoes, only rounds to be about 6'6". So really a big miss on Alabama's end by oversizing Amari Allen's height here. Wingspan was much more of a guessing game for me before the combine because those measurements are taken very rarely for players, but these are the changes that were made in my draft class and reflect the new combine measurements. You'll see the most prominent impacted player here was Kingston Flemings, who measured at 6'3.5" wingspan, and AJ Dybantsa and Cameron Boozer, I think, benefited really nicely here, adding an additional 2 inches to their wingspans. For speed attributes on the players, I wanted to just show you guys 2 different peer groups here. So this first peer group is players who measured a 3.2 or less second 3/4 court sprint time and their associated speeds and how those changed after their combine measurement result. If you see green, that means the player went up, I think, significantly. If you see red, that means the player went down significantly in their speed rating. So no one who tested in this group took more than a 6-point hit to their speed, while we had the bigs, Zuby Ejiofor and Morez Johnson. They tested extremely well for their size, and they were rewarded accordingly. Now they're both over 80 in their speed rating because of how they tested. But I thought things really got interesting in this next peer group. So this peer group of people who measured between 3.22 and 3.28 seconds in the sprint time, we had Michael Brown Jr., we had Tyler Tanner, and Ibuka Okori, 3 of the fastest, I think, players in this draft class. And you could see, based on how the trend is going of the combined speed rating, you would expect that their speed rating would be somewhere between 78 and 74. But I had to manually intervene here. If they were in the upper helm of this group, I put them at 85 because I just feel like they are faster than how they tested. And in Ibuka Okori's case, I actually put him at 89. I believe he's the fastest player in this draft class, especially with the ball in his hands, and I just still wanted this draft class to acknowledge that, so I kind of threw the testing out the window for the most part and gave him an 89 instead of what I previously had him at, which was 94. So he still took a hit, but not as severe as what the test time would have reflected. All the other players in the draft class, I generally mapped their combine sprint time to their new 2K speed rating. And then the last combine measurement I wanted to discuss was vertical. Just a couple of surprising results from my end that I thought were interesting. So you had this first peer group of people who saw a 15 or more point increase to their vertical. So Christian Anderson and Braden Smith just blew the vertical testing out of the water. Christian Anderson in particular with a 40.5-inch vertical. I did not see that coming at all. I am aware that people can manipulate the max vertical kind of like Reed Shepherd did by manipulating their standing reach, but still, to measure 40.5 inches is extremely impressive, and I wanted to reflect the combine test with the vertical rating here. So these are the biggest movers in the positive direction, while these guys here on the screen were the biggest movers in the negative direction. So no one went down by more than 10 here. Henry Vasar saw a 9-point decrease, and honestly, Yaxel Lendeborg, I feel like I originally overrated his vertical rating, so it was just recalibrating that based on his vertical measurements. So my biggest takeaways from this draft combine is that there wasn't a ton of separation of the big 4 or big 3 at the top. AJ, Darren, and Cam, I thought, did about as expected, maybe even slightly better. Caleb Wilson maybe had a smaller wingspan than we expected, but still tested pretty well athletically. That guard cohort 5 to 9, I didn't think anyone really separated themselves in a really impressive fashion. Kingston Flemings tested well athletically, but the wingspan maybe is a bit of a concern. Keaton Wagler maybe didn't measure as well as we wanted him to. Darius Acuff was about as expected, and Michael Brown, I thought, measured out pretty well as well. I thought things really got interesting when it came to Morez Johnson. He was the big winner in my eyes. He crushed every single athletic test that was in his path. He measured well with his height. He's a true 6'9" without shoes, and a 255-pound frame is super impressive in the way he's able to move. Also crushed it in the shooting drills as well. So I think he might end up hearing his name called a little earlier than expected maybe at the draft. And this was already a guy, if you check his Tankathon profile, he doesn't have any weaknesses on his statistical profile. Someone who does the dirty work, who can play alongside another big. We saw it at Michigan this year. So I think he's impressive on all levels. The next thing I wanted to discuss as far as updates to my draft class has to do with shot location tendencies for all the players. So I mentioned last month that I updated all the 3-point tendencies for players in my draft class. I took it a step further this month and I updated the under basket shot tendency, the shot close shot tendency, and the shot mid-range shot tendency. I took a look at all the players in my draft class and the frequency at which they shot from each of these locations. Depending on the particular shot location, I set a maximum threshold and I did a statistical distribution and applied those tendencies. So that basically sums up what I did there. I also used my shot location data that I've been tracking all year to see who deserved the Limitless range badge in my draft class. Honestly, I was trying to see if Keaton Wagler actually deserved it at silver, but the results are pretty interesting here. I did one query where I looked at players who made threes from 25 feet or further, and then another query where I looked at players who made threes from 27 feet or further. Talking about the first group from 25 feet or greater, I ended up going with 40 3-pointers made as my threshold for bronze Limitless range. Unfortunately, that meant Cameron Carr I had to remove Limitless range from. I just squeezed Keaton Wagler in even though he's at 39. I just kind of did it anyway. And Michael Brown, he missed games due to injury, so I just kind of extrapolated him up to that 40 threshold as well. You'll also see that also means that I had to apply Limitless range to Bennett Sturts, Alex Caravan, and then newcomer Tyler Nickel. Looking at threes made from 27 feet or more, you'll see the top two guys appear again, Tyler Nickel and Christian Anderson. I decided to set the threshold for silver Limitless range here at 25 3-pointers made. So everybody below that, if you're in that first cohort, you'll be down to just bronze. So yeah, Christian Anderson and Tyler Nickel both have silver Limitless range, and this is the reason why. One micro change that I did finally get around to doing was updating AJ Dybantsa's Jumpshot release. So if you have watched my short or TikTok about AJ Dybantsa's Jumpshot release in NBA 2K, you'll know that I used his Jumpshot release from the Hoop Summit last year, basically from when AJ was in high school. When I went to go see AJ Dybantsa play against UConn, I first noticed that his jump shot actually looked different from what I saw in high school. It looked like a faster and lower release with not as much lift on it, and it honestly looked like he was able to eliminate the 2-motion shot that he had in high school, where he would jump in the air, pull the ball back, and then release the ball. His shot this year was a much more efficient transfer of energy throughout the shot motion. We got a really clean look at this during the combine shooting drills. I'm not an expert on jump shots, but clearly you can see the differences here. You can see the angle of his elbows, both elbows, the shooting arm and the guide hand. Both are more 90 degrees compared to how he was in high school. Look at the angle of his back. His back is almost perfectly straight a year later compared to what it was a year ago. And then just look at the elevation on the jump shot itself. He's not getting as much elevation as he was a year ago. And then just in general, the shot pocket is lower and closer to his face than it was a year ago. So that's what I was looking to target with the jump shot change. So you'll see the jump shot base went from Jaylen Brown to now Jeremiah Robinson Earl, and the jump shot blend has changed a little bit in terms of the number. I tweaked it so that it favors DeMar DeRozan a little bit more by 20, and I also changed the release timing from normal to quick. So that about does it for this month's updates. A few other things I have on the horizon. I do really want to incorporate hot zones into the draft class. I've been promising it for months and months, but I think now is probably a really good time to start on that. So I would expect that to be done by next month. I'm also working on an off-season roster. So that's in the works right now so that when all the players are drafted, they will be in the 2K default roster. And then I'll continue updating that roster throughout the off-season based on trades that happen, free agent signings, etc. So keep an eye out for that around the time of the draft. And yeah, that's about it, man. So thank you guys for watching, especially if you made it all the way to this point. I appreciate all of your support. And yeah, I will catch you in the next one, hopefully, and hope you have a great rest of your day.